All right. Let me double check the microphone. That's working great. Good morning. So we want to talk about the future of work in supply chain. And we thought maybe we should ask ChatGPT to draw the appropriate title page. And that looks quite promising, right? Who's we? So my name is 𝗨হি𝗶𝘃𝗁𝘀. I'm a professor of supply chain operations strategy here at KLU. I've been at KLU for a long time. I now supervise a team of 8 PhD students who are who are financed by industry partners like Infineon, Bayer, or Krone. And this research around new technologies, AI, data, well, that's a starting point. And that's why I thought it affects the work that people are having in supply chain. And that would be a good title for this talk. And that's why I invited Frank as a co-speaker. So maybe, Frank, you could say a few words.
Yeah, thanks, Kai. And first of all, thanks for inviting me. We're going to have a little bit of a conversation today. Doing that the first time in that format. So not everything will probably go well, but we do our best. So I'm leading the global supply chain at Danfoss in the segment of climate solutions, and we're going to talk a little bit about, how we see the future of work. Also bring in a little bit my personal opinion about it. Being around about 26, 27 years in the field of supply chain management, but also logistics and also business transformation. Have been living in Germany, in the US, in South Africa, and in Brazil. So a lot of things. And we're going to talk a little bit about, what we're all facing, the problems, but also where technology comes in a little bit, have that conversation today, and then also, is technology being able to help us? We had today also a very interesting presentation about artificial intelligence and is the human going to be replaced? So also we're going to talk a little bit about, and hopefully there will be some questions.
Great. And we thought we'd provide our 3 main messages up front. And we hope that we can convey these 3 messages. So first one, and I think, well, I probably get a lot of buy-in for that. There is a huge potential for benefits of AI in supply chain management. So we just completed a study between KLU and SAP about how to really make digital supply chain work. And while many initiatives fail, initiatives around AI seem to be rather successful. Still some fail, but a lot of success there. So that's great. So that's the first point. Second point is, however, with more AI, supply chain processes will change. So we will see new systems, we will see new processes, we will see a change in roles because people need to interact with some AI systems that are often black box. They might delegate decisions to these systems, so less decisions at the moment of truth, less control perhaps, and that's certainly driving some challenges. And that's probably the third point. We really need to enable this change. So we need to train people to really work with these new systems. We need to allow them to have trust into these systems, because if they don't trust the systems, they will constantly override, and overrides might mess up rather good decisions by an AI. So these are really the 3 things that we want to talk about. And maybe we should first talk about the situation of supply chains today. And Frank, what do you think?
Yeah, and thanks, Kai. So that's the reality of our day, and I'm pretty much sure many of you have to deal with this picture, right? I mean, if we wake up in the mornings, always get up in the mornings, switch on the TV, and ask myself, so what's happened, right? And that's really the key message. The frequency and magnitude of disruptions, they are increasing. So if I think about my job, maybe a couple of years ago, that was completely different. Completely different also in terms of scope, in terms of what we need to cover, in terms of what we have to think about it, and that's the picture, right? And also when we look into our jobs, and the reality looks like it's really anticipating becomes a key skill. Adaptability becomes a key skill. And it's important when you think about managing supply chains more effectively. with all these disruptions and volatility going on, and we, I think, have all experienced that in the last few years with the corona pandemic, but also geopolitical events and all that. And that's a lot of discussion around, volatility and resilience, and is volatility going to go away? And probably it isn't. So we have to face that, and we have to think about how we manage that going forward, also with technology. And the mega question is technology the answer? So over to you.
So is technology the answer? Is AI the answer? Will it solve all our problems? And a couple of years back, I had an interesting request by a company. And they were saying, well, we have all these service technicians, a few thousand service technicians that go to the customer and to maintain some heavy equipment, and they need spare parts. So, and the old process was like, at the end of the day, the service technician returns to his home and orders the spare parts that are required for the next day. Because after visiting the customers, they realized what they need. And then there was a rather expensive process in trunk delivery overnight. So next morning they would leave their depot, the spare part would already be in the trunk of the car. And now the one manager asked me, Kai, there's all this AI coming up. Can't we forecast what parts are required so we can ship them a few days in advance? So before the breakdown of the machine, before the maintenance of the machine, and that will really eliminate this very expensive process. Well, you can imagine, we are talking about hundreds of thousands of different spare parts. Nobody can anticipate which service technician will need which spare part on a particular day, right? Impossible. So so probably that's one element that's difficult. And then there was an interesting article in Harvard Business Review from BCG that said, well, in the future, AI will be so powerful, that's the death of supply chain management. We don't need planners anymore. This will all be done automatically, lights out planning. And I really had to laugh when I saw this article in 2017. And I guess the past years indicated there is more than just technology required to make this work.
Yeah, you're right. And really, when you look at that death of supply chain management, wow, big statement to make, right? And the other big statement is to make, AI, will it solve everything? And the view is no, it won't. And there are various reasons for that, technically, but also it's a combination between art and science. And that's really the reflection when you look at that picture here. And when you look into sustainable supply chain performance, really being able to deliver sustainable business performance and results over a longer period of time, it is not without of humans, right? And the role of humans, and that's really the key message today, and our jobs, they will change. And also, when you look into what does that mean also for universities and all that, it is going to be a challenge. But when you look into what technology is being able to do, and also the hope and the excitement about what technology will be doing in future, it goes in hand, right? When you look into the structures of organization, when you look into the roles of supply chain professionals, if you look into the role of technology, but also what the goal is. So a lot of people talking about technology and everything, but out of really saying what is our goal, or what's our ambition and where we are going. And when you look at that, it's really everything is connected. And it has to be connected. So it's not AI without of the human, it's not the human without of AI, so things are going to be connected. But there's also a lot of hype when you think about AI, where people are saying, AI is the newest thing. So let's look at that on the next slide. Is AI really new? Traditional AI. I could go around the room here, ask a year, 1956. AI has been around since 1956, traditional AI. Generative AI is around the last few years. And now the hope is how we can connect both worlds with each other. So when you think about, traditional AIs, it's pretty much a prediction system. It's based on data, and it's based on the quality of data from various sources. So what's the difference? Difference is speed. So you can use various data from various systems. You have systems and you can deploy them, they can predict, and they can do it very fast. But the key message is also you still need a human being to do that, right? And look also at the data in terms of the quality. Technology will help, but also the conclusion you're going to make. So often also being said as scenario planning. So you have various scenarios, you still have to make a conclusion, but you get potentially a better prediction on linked to a certain outcome. So that's really on a traditional AI, so nothing new since 1956. It has evolved and it will evolve. But we heard this morning also generative AI, and generative AI is really where we can use AI and we can create new context or content. And that's really what we have learned this morning about business process and value stream mapping and modeling and optimization. I think there's a lot in there, right? Also when you think about, you run meetings and you can have AI in there and AI can summarize something, for example, we're testing intensively how we can reduce the complexity in an organization, and ours, for example, and also how we basically can become more productive in a way. So really, that's the starting point. But let's look into some of the examples in supply chain. So we also looked this morning on, generative. So I was very excited to see that this morning, but there are also other things when you, think about procurement, and I have an example for procurement there where you can say, smart contracts and where generative AI can help. You can think about product design. So a lot of products can be designed in a certain way, differently, together with the engineer, and it can save time, right? And you can test also certain things with generative AI in the way of in the impact for the environment. So something we, for example, doing at Danfoss, as a Danish company, we are very, very much into ESG and that being part of our business model. So you can use that kind of testing from really from the engineering, but also how you run your supply chains in a way. And it can give you some kind of predictions. That's the traditional AI part, and the generative AI part can save you time to make yourself and your organization more productive. So that's really the key message here. So we can look also on the next slide, and I'm building that up, and Kai is going to go in a second into some use cases on this as well. So when you think about your procurement activity, so what is procurement today, and what's the role of procurement in future? Very, very complex. Because when you think about certain legislations coming in, ESG coming in, for example, the EU Supply Chain Due Diligence Act, we have that in Germany for the last 1.5 or 2 years. So the world of a procurement professional is gonna change in future. So how can we cope with that, right? And that's really where AI can come in, and AI can optimize the partnerships with your suppliers, supplier communication. It can also in the way of contract management, smart contract management, so you don't start all over again, always new. That can be done through that. Supplier continuous improvement in the same way. But most importantly is the part when you think about risk management. Well, think about also what I said in the picture I showed you before, what our day looks like in the way of the risk, and the frequency and magnitude of risk is really the prediction. So what can you predict and anticipate what could happen in your supply chain network if certain events are happened, right? Based on certain scenarios. So that's really where the hope is, and also where we would see certain technologies are playing today already, certain technology providers are providing that, but again, you have to connect that with different systems you have in your enterprise, as well as the human plays a role as well. And the role of a human is gonna change almost to a degree that you have technology as a co-pilot, right? Almost like you're flying a plane as in future, so supply chain is not that. You're becoming a pilot, you have a co-pilot, AI, and from that perspective, you have an opportunity to make better informed decisions based on a set of data and recommendations you're gonna have. And that's really when you think about supply chain planning. So we tested a lot around supply chain planning the last couple of months because we had a lot of volatility. I think everyone can relate to that. We're coming from a just-in-time to a just-in-case to a just-don't-know. So last year we tested a lot around our forecastability of our business because we had volatility and sales is always very optimistic. And we had a gap of around about a couple of millions. I think maybe it was 280 or something like that. So the ability for us to act in supply chain was not so good because we have very long-tailed supply chains over, many, many months. We source somewhere, we manufacture somewhere, and we ship somewhere, and we sell somewhere. And we said, okay, what's the problem? The problem is that we don't know what we're going to sell in 3 months from now, or 4 or 5 or 6, and how can we solve that? And we tested a lot around, artificial intelligence for our sales forecast, and also found out that the ability we have with AI is very good, and we being better, not perfect, in our prediction on our sales forecast. Now you could say, yeah, well, sales forecast is not operational forecast, and I would agree with that. And that's really where we are now trying out certain things in the way of how can we now go into a more disaggregated level of predictions by mapping certain data and key leading indicators to get to a better forecast, right? To use that for our operations in order to run our supply chains. Not an easy task to do, but we also believe, it's not going to be perfect, but it's going to be helpful for us, also in a way how we can do scenario plannings in our organization. And again, the role of our planners is going to change going forward in order to work with technology. So again, here, that's the main message. And moving on to the next slide, now over to you.
So let's take this example of demand forecasting, and let's look at a research project we had at KLU. And well, we are here in a context of a supermarket. And well, in order to start the replenishment on time, we need sales forecast, or this industry partner needs a sales forecast. For example, for Pampers in that given size. And the key question is, how many units will be sold today, tomorrow, Monday, Tuesday, and next week? Because this information will then be fed into the planning system, and based on that, the replenishment will be triggered. So if you look at that example, you realize, yes, it's a supermarket, and that was a British supermarket we collaborated with, and they have some, on average, 20,000 different SKUs in the store. They have 500 stores, and they need to forecast the demand for the next 21 days. And now if you do the math, you realize, yes, so that's 20,000 articles, 500 stores, 21 days in advance. So that means 210 million forecasts need to be generated and updated each day. And you realize, yes, without some very strong system, that's impossible, right? And if you look at that, yes, AI has access to all different types of data, promotional data, weather forecasts, all different types of competitor actions. And yes, that can help to generate very granular forecast for each store, for each SKU for the next 21 days, to leverage all this rich data that is available, and hopefully it's using the latest algorithm. So that's really one example of a very concrete application. And I come back to this example because it's going to change the way humans interact quite substantially. Let's take a look at a second example. AI for disruption management. So let's assume the following situation. We have a plant in France, and that needs to be shut down sometime in June to do some urgent maintenance. So we can't produce in that plant for some time. So how do we fill that? What you would normally do is you would have a huge task force of planners trying to spend days and days and weeks to really understand what are our alternatives, how will it affect our capability to deliver, what are alternative actions to do. Now, with AI, yes, there are some advanced planning systems that will try to run simulations of what is possible, more or less automatically. So can we maybe transfer that to an alternative plant? Do we need to rebuild, pre-build inventory? Do we ship in inventory from other regions? What can we do in order to fill this gap? And if you look at that, yes, with these types of systems, we are able to leverage real-time data. So if this data is available in real time, yes, you can use that data to really plan your production accordingly. You ideally automate all the data processing, and hopefully you also prepare the decision making. Ultimately, there might be the planner still be in charge which alternative to offer, because maybe one alternative is very good on the lead time or on the service level we offer, but it comes at a certain cost that is maybe higher than what we anticipated. So ultimately, human is still in charge of making the decision what to do. And I guess that's probably important to really consider, yes, there are these two characters, right? So there is the machine and there's the human. And in the fall, we had a nice session at the Otto Group Supply Chain Summit, and the participants indicated what they see as the strengths of these two players. And if you look at the AI, yes, it's about speed, it's about processing big data, it's about automation. If you look at the human is not useless. No, there's creativity, there's hopefully flexibility, there's maybe empathy. And what I find also very important is there's a lot of tacit knowledge that the human has that is not coded anywhere, and the AI system doesn't have access to that. So that's probably important, bringing these two players together. And maybe let's look again at this demand forecasting process, that initial use case. In the traditional use case, how would you generate all these forecasts? Well, generating 210 million forecasts per day is probably impossible in a very manual process. But if you look at many companies, what they are still doing is there's a planner, and there are his two best companions, Microsoft Excel and the SAP system. And based on that, he generates some kind of forecast, sales forecast. So now with an AI-based process, this is fundamentally changing. So we have the AI system that is using all this generative power to generate all these forecasts with an initial AI forecast. But the planner can decide to intervene and override. So he doesn't have to look at everything. He just decides, oh, maybe I want to look into the ice cream sales in the south of the UK because I feel there is particularly good weather and AI is not capturing the sales effect accordingly. So the planner can adjust the forecast and override, and ultimately he's responsible if the system is wrong. So he gets beaten up if that's not really working. So if you look at this, at our industry partner, we had exactly the setup, this new AI-based process. So and there were roughly 200 planners that were involved in deciding to override or to let the AI forecast pass through. And if you look at that, they seem to trust the system already rather well. So they adjust roughly 5% of the forecast. And if they decide to override the demand for ice cream in south of England for the next 5 days, they already make many adjustments, right, with just one click. So 5% override, that's pretty good. But now the key question is, how good are these overrides? And that was quite disappointing. Half of these overrides didn't add value. Half of the overrides added value. So we try to become a little bit more granular to understand there are certain areas where the human is actually pretty good, where he has an 80% probability, 80% chance that he will actually improve compared to the AI forecast. However, there are also other areas where he's only improving on 20%. So, and when we started this work, there was no feedback for the planner. The planner didn't know when to override or if there was a successful override or not. And that's being implemented based on our project to give the planner more visibility, more transparency if this is really happening. So to summarize that, yes, we have a traditional process. And this is really, I call it, the human is in the lead deciding at the moment of truth. So he makes a decision. And this is really, the human is in full control. He needs a good understanding of all the details, because without knowing all the details, he can't make good decisions. But he has system support, and we had that for a long period, right? Lots of systems that support the human. Now, in the new process, the future process, we see a quite significant shift in the human's role. And that's what we call the human guides the system to make decisions on his behalf. So we are running currently a project with a company called 𝗟9, a big planning software company, and they want to implement something where they say, well, the planner should really only focus on the things where he has extra information, and for all the rest, the machine, the AI, should make the decisions on his behalf. But in order to do that, yes, you need to train the system accordingly. You need to feed the system with data, because maybe there is data that you have, but that's not accessible for the system. So this certainly will affect the role of the planner. And so maybe limited control, and for sure trust will be an issue, right? And maybe you could say a few words what you think about trust in the setting.
Yeah, I believe trust comes down to everything. It's not only related to systems, I guess, and I know. But I mean, based on our own experience, also what we have done, we implement many of systems and modern technology in our organization. But fundamentally, what we found is trust is an issue, because we are not trusting the systems. And we have workarounds, and we have Excel spreadsheets, and we have many other tools. And I guess Bill Gates will still be happy because we're using his tools for a while. So trust is really essential, right? And when you look into the other element of data, can I trust that? What data is in there? And also, especially when you talk about different sources you are using and data. Can I trust that? Can I trust the machine, or that the machine is better making predictions than we as human? So I believe this is a real case where we also working on and haven't figured it out yet, but it's a journey. But it's also important that we see that speed, because technology is already, you know, the train has left the train station and is almost there at the destination, and we humans somewhere still at the train station somewhere. Maybe we are already on the way. But it also means that we have to upskill. And upskill is really in the way of understanding, but also trusting, using the technology to advantage the technology can bring to us human, right? And to use my example as co-pilot and using the co-pilot. When you fly a plane, am I trusting my co-pilot or not when I'm the captain? Maybe I should trust the co-pilot, and maybe the co-pilot is my companion, Kai as a robot in future. would be great, right? When you look into also, are we alone? And we used here an example from the largest research and advisory company called Gartner, where they looked into many companies and said, where are they struggling with? And I don't know if you can see it, but it's around about, 58% of global companies really have to do something in the area of digital upskilling because it is fast. Technology goes faster than we as human. And we are not pretty much good in really upskilling. And that's something we have to learn and something we need to do also in a way of really the structures we have in an organization, but also the skills we have in an organization, but also on the other side, the job profiles, right? What I said before, our jobs are going to change, and what does that mean in terms of the scope and the role of the person in future, to your example, the planner, but also what does that mean in terms of upskilling? But also fundamentally, how do we get to the point of that we are trusting the machine and working with the machine? So that's that, and to sum it up, and then we're going into questions. Now I see 3 big themes for us to deal with. One is to build resilience, and risk management is really the part we dealing in a world which is different, will be different. Set the example from just in time to just in case to just I don't know. But I have to deal with it. We all have to deal with it, right? And that means the nature of supply chain risk and disruption is changing rapidly. Fact. But also that means that we have to elevate the supply chain role within of organizations. That's happened as we speak. So supply chain is not that good news, I guess. The future of work and supply chain is AI enabled. So it's not like just AI without of the human, it's the combination of both. But that also means that we have to somewhere redesign the employees' job profiles, really have an understanding of skills, but also partnering comes in with universities and with other institutions in that regard, software vendors and all that, because it's going to change. And if you look into the job profiles we have today in companies, that's not really incorporated into the job profiles in companies, the AI element or the technology element. And digital transformation, I think we forever transforming. I don't know where we are transforming to, but we use the transformation for the last 20 years or something like that. So it's not going to go away, but what is going to change is the digital transformation. And this is fast. So like I said, also the train has left the train station, has almost there at the destination, but we as humans are not there. And that's really when you think about how to manage supply chain to the point what I said before, what's our goal? Our goal is really to have sustainable business performance and results of value creation, but also value preservation. And that's really when it comes to making better informed decisions, smart deliberate choices. The complexity we're dealing with is enormous. You talked about 250 or 210, I don't remember. We looked into our little business and the planning combinations. We would have 68.4 million different planning combinations. So are we as humans actually going to be able mathematically to solve these problems in a volatile world? Probably not. So we have to trust the machine in the end of the day, and we need to get it right. And that's my final message. And now I think we are at the time where we have questions, hopefully some.
So you realize we could go on for hours, but I think we still have a few minutes for questions. Thank you.
Stefan Engels is my name. I'm here on behalf of 𝗨𝗶𝘃𝗀𝗁 International. Frank, you shocked me a little bit here, because in your introductory slide you said you see all those geopolitical events. And then further on in the presentation we saw the perfect model matching between AI and human. But where is the geopolitical stuff taken into account? Because the best process is of no help and useless if you don't get the pallets out of the door.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. You still have to get the pellets out of the door, right? And how to deal with geopolitical events, that's a different topic, I guess. But certain things can be anticipated, right? And that's also where you would get events. And I think we had one last night again. You could now use technology of saying, you know, what does that mean, that event? And what potential or exposure you have in your supply chains. So when I got up this morning, the first thing I thought about under the shower was, of course, I have to stay here with Kai. And the second was about what does it mean for our supply chain, the event from last night, right? And are we having risk exposure and all that? So now I think about that, maybe many of my people in managing our global supply chain hopefully do the same. But can we really see everything? Probably not. And can we make all the critical connections? No. And that's really where I see technology really coming in, helping us to connect the dots, but also saying, you know, what does that mean in terms of, do we have risk exposure? Right, that's from a geopolitical side, and really anticipating what's the next event, right? Because it's almost like a domino. You have one thing happen, or cause and effect relationships, right, from a science point of view, and what does that mean for your specific supply chain to push the pallets out of the door in the end of the day?
And that reminds me of an interesting example, a company called Resolink. Yeah. So they provide solutions to, first of all, map your supply chains. And at the same time, they analyze news feeds to really understand what is happening around the world. And then they try to map, how does this affect your supply chain, your partners in the supply chain? And certainly, if you know in advance, if you know a bit earlier than your competitor, you might still be able to take action before all the alternative capacity is gone for shipping from somewhere to somewhere. So Resolink, I think that's a really cool software.
I know, we'll be using them as well, yeah.
Thank you. Patrick Thompson, BASF. So what resonated with me is basically the topic of training the system, yeah. I think training the system is actually the simple part. Training the people is the difficult part, I would say, yeah. And at BASF we play around a lot with AI solutions, yeah. The biggest, let's say the biggest struggle that I have is to make sure that we don't worsen our result, yeah, this feedback system, yeah, and I would be interested, maybe also how you deal with this topic, yeah, or what sparks of ideas you could give, yeah, because that, for me, is where we fail in implementation, yeah, or that is, for me, one of the biggest risks. The second would be just a comment, yeah, I think one big foundation for AI and mass data-based systems in the end is also quality of data, yeah? And I think AI can also play a fundamental role of cleaning up the master data and the data points, yeah? Because that is also where, from my perspective, when we look at AI model generation and so on, where we fail, yeah? And if I look at the areas that you presented where AI can be fundamentally of use, I think master data cleanup, so to speak, is another one. Yeah? And yeah, my hope is, of course, that we are also getting systems that are a little bit inoculated against bad master data, yeah? That can even work well with a, let's say, worse data set. Yeah? So, but major question is, how can we get the people on board, yeah, and in the end up with a picture like this and not where the other one is a fist, yeah, and you feel.
And I love that question. So, and that's exactly, I mentioned this 𝗟9 project, where the company sees also the biggest challenges. So they believe that their software is actually doing good stuff in terms of planning, but then adoption is rather low and trust is rather low. And we talked to now a dozen customers, so including big companies like 𝗟់𝗶𝘃𝗀𝗁𝘀, PepsiCo, Crocs, and we find one constant scheme there, and that is create transparency on these overrides. Because yes, if planners will learn that this or that type of override is really constantly making it worse, and he's responsible, he will not do it anymore. And so we realized in some situations, more than 90% of the overrides failed. And I think that's certainly important to provide this feedback to the planners involved. On the data quality,
Yeah, it's a big topic, huh? Data quality, I don't know who can confidently saying they have that under control. We don't have it under control, but we're working on it. And of course you can use technology for this, and it's also a question you need to ask yourself, how many data you really need in order to make good decisions, right? And as more as you feed into the beast in terms of the technology, as more you have to deal with data quality. And you need to think about now we connecting that to systems from the outside. And there is a certain degree of what is beyond your control in terms of data quality. So you cannot check what basically the quality looks like when you use AI technology and you use different data sources. So that's something you need to look at that. When you are in control of your own systems, technology is there, where you can at least get some help to get your data quality under control. Is that going to be 100%? No, but maybe you get from 50% and 80%, and that's already more helpful, right? Where we, and there was also another comment, of course, also working on, is what is the impact to the business? Because on the one side you have operational data and operational scenarios and recommendations, and maybe technology is there also to give you the recommendation operationally, but what's the impact to the business financially? Which means in the way of top line, bottom line, and returns, right? And that's really where it's also going to, right? When you have scenarios, not only to look operationally of saying, you know, what does that mean, or a certain event and all that, and you have maybe 3 choices in technology, what does that mean to your P&L? Because in the end of the day, you also have a financial responsibility. And it's something, for example, where we trying it out now, of saying, you know, how can we use that technology not only to make predictions operationally or how we manage and mitigate our risk, but also what does it mean to really our P&L. So, not sure if it gave you the answer you have been looking for.
I think we have time for one last question before lunch.
Yeah, thank you very much for this great presentation. I mean, yeah, naturally I would totally agree on the excitement of AI and generative AI. Now on the horizon there is this EU AI Act coming up, regulating how AI will be used, all these kind of things. Would you say this is more a limitation or it's also something that would create trust, for example, what you also mentioned in your presentation?
Yeah, I can take it and then maybe you can add to it. I believe it's required. You need certain standards in the end of the day. And I give you a typical example. I've been invited to a call from an outside vendor recently who wanted to sell me something, and I was very surprised that I hooked onto a Teams call, and then in the Teams call was a third person, and I didn't know who the third person was until I found out it was AI in the call. Maybe I've spoken to a robot, I don't know. But then shortly after, I received an email with a summary of what we have discussed in that call. So from a technology point of view, I thought, wow, amazing. But then I thought, from an integrity point of view, he should have let me know before, right? So that's really where I believe we need to regulate that from a point of view, what we allow, what we don't allow to happen, and then deal with that. We need a degree of standardization, right, in that way, also from an ethical point of view. Secondly, also the data and the data quality, and I'm hoping also that we get to a point of standardization of data quality in certain ways and figure that out. But it's also not helpful, from my point of view, if we are going our own way in the EU, and the EU, now you get me going in a way of regulations, we're becoming more and more regulated, and that also sets certain limitations for us as a business to act. Yeah. Right? And if we're comparing ourselves then to maybe other countries and other regions, then perhaps we have a certain degree of limitations in Europe where maybe others don't have that, right? And that's also something we have to figure out.
And let me stop here. So there are some additional readings that could be interesting for you. If you're interested, please contact me. And here are our contact details. So thanks a lot for attending and have a great lunch break.